A leader in event education, the Event Leadership Institute offers on-demand video classes, interviews with industry mavericks, and online instructor-led professional development courses taught by industry experts. Visit eventleadershipinstitute.com for more information and to see a schedule of upcoming classes.
Are you a follower?
Okay, so we're gonna probably add.
Welcome to GatherGeeks, a podcast by BizBash, the place where people passionate about meetings and events come together. Here are your hosts, BizBash CEO David Adler and Executive Editor Beth Kormanik.
Welcome to GatherGeeks. We call ourselves GatherGeeks because this podcast dives deep into the nuances of events. Well, get ready to listen to what David calls the geekiest conversation I've ever had. Today, you'll hear from Talia Mashiach, founder and CEO of the tech firm Eved in Chicago. Talia went from owning her own event planning company to focusing on providing a system to streamline vendor payments. For people who got into the events business as creatives or strategists, dealing with invoices may be an unfamiliar or undesirable task, but it needs to get done. You'll hear her philosophy on why companies should implement these back-end technologies and why some owners are hesitant. Through the discussion, you'll also get into the mindset of an entrepreneur and possibly get to thinking yourself about the next great innovation for the event industry. Let's take a listen.
Okay, so Talia, tell us the little story about why you decided to start the company that you did and what were the pain points that got you there. And let's kick it off that way.
All right, well, thank you. So I launched Eved in 2010 as a software company that focuses on spend management for meetings and events. And the journey to this point was back in 2004. I really saw the industry and I was interested and fascinated actually in how these large companies or even anyone in general create these big events, and you can create such amazing experiences. But there is also the part of it that is the whole back end, right? Everyone would love to just produce an event without having to worry about the budget and the payments and all the supplier aspects, all the back end pieces of it. But the reality is it's a combination of this kind of front end part and the back end part. And to me, I looked at the back end, kind of the process, the payments, the invoicing, and just thought it was incredibly inefficient and very, very manual, and saw opportunities to be able to create software that could automate that process. So more of the time for the planner could be focused on creating a great experience and focusing in on the customer. So in order to really understand that and really be able to bring something to the industry, I launched an event company in Chicago in 2004 and built our own software internally to completely automate that back end so that my planners were completely focused around the experience and the customer, and we automated as much as we could on the financial aspects, on the invoices, on the payments. And as a result, we were able to grow the company tremendously over 4 years into a $9 million company. We did 4,000 events a year with one part-time finance person, and I had about 15 event planners that were really effectively and efficiently able to create these great experiences and win a lot of business.
Using your system?
Yeah, so we did an internal software that completely automated all of that for our event company. And so using that software and we've built a really great event company, I saw that then as an opportunity to know a lot about the industry, really understand how it works, not just be someone who's good at building software, but really in the trenches and understands the world of the planner and understands the world of the event industry. And so in 2010, I sold the service part. I sold off the event company, but I took the technology with me to take that and launch Eved and be able to find the opportunity for the entire industry to really find ways to eliminate the pain of the back end parts, right? Mostly payments, invoices, right? All that financial.
So how did you go back a little bit?
Sure.
Did you strategically go in saying, I'm going to build this before you even decided to do your services business?
So I went in and said, in building a services business, I have to have the software that would completely automate that process. To me, that was the only way to really build a successful event company.
But why did you think that way? Most event people don't think that way first. Like, what was your background that made you sort of
I'm a business really person. Marketing is my major, right? So I look at events as a channel of marketing.
Right.
And so I looked at it more of how do you get the most return on investment. And from a business perspective is my costs were my people, my planners. And the more that you could spend time with the customer and creating these great experiences, the more value would they bring to the business. They didn't bring a lot of value having to process invoices and go back and forth with suppliers and worry if they can reconcile their statements at the end.
And so what was the time that the event organizer that you had, your event planners, what were they doing? And how did you make it more efficient early on? Like, what was the process you went through? Did you watch them?
I built the company from scratch, right? So I really thought about it that it could be a consistent process from the back end. Let them have the freedom to manage the events in the way they each uniquely want to do. But from a back end perspective, so for example, we needed to buy from a lot of our suppliers, and we bought the same things over and over again. Instead of going and having the planner request a quote every single time, wait for the quote to come back, and then have to, take that quote from multiple suppliers, create a Word document proposal or a PowerPoint, right, that took time. Then, send that to the customer, revise it a bunch of times, right? Then knowing what they wanted, sending in my work orders or service orders to the supplier so they knew, right? And then all the changes that happen, you manually update all that. And then when the bills come, right, all that stuff behind the scenes was a lot of work. And I saw the opportunity to have software that in essence housed a lot of the catalog, like a catalog of all the main items and were already priced, right, all set, ready to go, linked to the supplier, so that you in essence can go in and pick and build your proposal, not from a Word document, but within software. And even if you had to add your own creative touch to it, you still linked it automatically to a supplier that was already had their information in it. And when you sent to your customer your proposal, in essence, it also sent all the purchase orders out or service orders to your supplier. And when you changed one thing for the customer, it updated it for the supplier. And then just LinkedIn Finance, right? You didn't have to first then create a separate invoice for the customer or receive separate invoices from your supplier. So I took all that stuff which came off of my planner, who just focused on what they wanted to create for the customer, and the back end pieces of it came all together and were automated.
So were you busy whiteboarding everything all the time and studying it and watching them like lab rats in a sense?
Well, I guess I just kind of looked at what the nice thing was is because I didn't do events, I just looked at it more broadly. I looked at, okay, what would be the ideal process for this back end, and was able to kind of whiteboard at that. And that's kind of my passion is solving kind of process problems. So I enjoyed that. And then we created this back end process. We automated it through software, and then they used it, and we grew. We literally went from 0 to 4 million to 6.8 million to 8 million to 9 million within a 4-year period.
Wow.
And just scaled so fast and the software was absolutely a huge piece of it. And then also as a business owner of an event company, I had the visibility to see everything that was going on. Like they had the freedom to kind of go build their proposals and automatically calculated their margins and everything else that they needed to know. And through reporting and things, I was able to see what was going on in the business. So I was able to really manage the business to be very profitable because of the software too.
Was there a bit of an aha moment that you had while you were going through the discovery phase that figured out what you saw that other people didn't see and how this business should be operated?
Well, I think, and again, this is back when I was focused at it from an event company perspective versus today where our customers are primarily large corporations.
Right.
Is that, people talk a lot about this business is very much about the relationships, and they're almost scared of software. Maybe that's changed a little bit over the last 10 years. But really what I looked at is I'm such a big believer in the human experience, right, and talking with people, and especially, but your conversations with your suppliers should be how about you're collaborating to create this great experience, not go, well, you charged me too much for this and you overpaid for that and your invoice is wrong. It's just not valuable. So for me, it was how do I get rid of the things that don't add value through software so that there's more time for the critical things that add the most value.
And how did you train your planners to accept this? And I guess the question continues today: how does the person that uses your system change the way they work, or does it?
Yeah, so I think, it depends. So at the time, the people who came and worked with us were super excited about that, right? They knew that was an element. We were kind of a technology-enabled event company, and they loved that about it, and they loved that they could spend more time with the customer. And they didn't like to do, most planners don't like to do the financial stuff, right? It's like part of the thing that comes along with the job. So if you've got something that makes that easier for you, most people like that. I think there was this perception, and I think there still is, and hesitancy around software. So I would say, what we had to do is overcome the perception that this was going to hinder their job as opposed to help them was probably the biggest obstacle. And I would say today we really focus. So today, we still do have that solution for event companies, which is really amazing for them. I still don't quite understand like how event companies are operating, especially on a large scale. I guess that you have a lot of manual processes. But our bigger product is really focused on the corporate market that has a tremendous amount of spend, and it's really around the biggest pain point, which is payments to the suppliers. So for a large company to have to make all of those payments, they have to go off their traditional payment systems to do it, and therefore it becomes all this work pushed.
Why is that? Why can't be? Because of the pressure of the deadlines, the time frame? What makes it different than any other supplier in a big company?
So there's a couple things, right? So the large ERP systems for, let's just say, office supplies and other kind of SKUs, right, inventory-based, works really well. You go in, you pick your inventory, you book it. For services categories like meetings and events, where you need a lot of one-off suppliers, right? You're doing them multiple suppliers for one event. You are not continuously booking the same type of thing. The payment terms could be different, right? In office supplies, you can order from the same supplier every time, pay them net 60. You do an event, you need that speaker tomorrow, or that you need a deposit in 5 days in order to book that hotel. The big ERP systems aren't set up to be flexible to then give you that deposit in 5 days. The way that you have to open the purchase orders in those systems are not built for the complexities of our category. So therefore, companies moved away from their ERP systems for meetings and events, lots of times going either outsourcing it completely to a third party to handle payments, going to credit card to handle payments. But as a result of that, the company really, the card was nice in the flexibility, but it created a lot of extra work in terms of the upfront approval process and the reconciliation process, and lost the visibility for the company. And so the opportunity that we see, especially on the large company, is that we can completely eliminate the pain of payments altogether from the planner by just they submit an invoice, and they're done. They don't worry about payments anymore. They don't reconcile. They don't get approval. They're done. And as a result of that, processing that, we actually have all of the data that the company wants to understand what their spend is.
So you can aggregate their whole event spend. I mean, I just read a survey saying that 1 in 10 major companies have over 750 events a year.
Yeah, the customers that we are attracted today to our tool are ones with pretty significant spend. They all have like 50 million and up in event spend. And now even with some of our really simple solution, which we call bill pay, which is really simply submit your invoice, we route it for approval, and ultimately, we take care of all the payments on that. That's really taking off even in companies with smaller amounts of spend.
So do you work on the front end as well, right? For the planning process?
Well, the tool that we have for event companies does enable them to be able to create proposals for their customer. On the corporate, they don't have proposals, right? They're the buyer. So it's basically, so we've got kind of the tool all the way down. So it's the buyer, and then we do have a solution, which was what I originally used in my company many years ago. We've rebuilt that, and we do have event companies that use that. So it's kind of, it's like a 360, right? It has everything going up to their customer and everything pushing down to their supplier.
And how easy is it to learn your system? Is it intuitive, or is it like Salesforce?
So I'm a product person, and so I really believer that you want your products to be as intuitive and easy as possible. Good business products should feel like consumer products. I would say our corporate products, which are much newer, are really simple. Like the bill pay product we just came out, it's literally like 3 minutes to submit an invoice, and you're like done, and you just watch on your dashboard as it gets approved, routes for approval in your company, and you get the status when it got paid. So simple, doesn't even need training. When you have, like we have really a full kind of procure to pay solution, that's kind of the next upgrade. And that maybe is a little bit more to learn. And then on our event company side, that is also takes time to learn, but once you get it and it clicks, it's really easy to use.
Are you basically running their entire business or just the actual event piece for an event company?
So when from the event company side, they still use like a financial system, like a QuickBooks, for example, that they may put like all of their expenses outside of the event, but all of the financial aspects of the event, the invoices up to their customer and payments received from their customer and their purchase orders or invoices from their suppliers and payments to their suppliers all runs through our system. And as a result of that, a business owner can really understand their margin. They can see where they're profitable. They could see which of their event planners are selling what, and it's really incredibly helpful to really grow an event company when you have access and visibility to that.
So when you look at event companies now today through the lens that you're looking at, are you seeing, there's obviously a lot of room for improvement, I guess is a nice way of putting it with event entrepreneurs. Is that changing, or is that still an uphill battle?
I think it is still an uphill battle. I'll tell you, because for me it felt like such a no-brainer that I had that software when I ran my event company, and I was able to grow it so quickly and make it so profitable and so efficient, and had such great customer success because my planners were focused there. I thought anyone who could have access to it would want it, no question. And I think I was just a little bit more sophisticated maybe than a lot of the business owners of event companies at the time. But when I look and see how event companies they're just using headcount, right? They use people to sit and reconcile, to check over margin. And I think people still maybe have a fear of software, or they're scared to invest in something, but ultimately what it does is it gives that business owner control over their business, which is really powerful if you own an event company.
But how do they know, even you're running an event department or you're running your own event company? How do you know what you don't know? You're coming in, you're given this role to produce events. Where do you see the biggest problem in terms of knowledge skills in our industry?
I think there is part of the reason I think maybe some of the success I had at running an event company is because I was a business person also.
Yeah.
So I think it is about creating this great experience for the customer, but also applying business and business acumen to whether you're running an event department or you're running your event business. And when you can't manage what you can't see, right? So if everything's manual and outside, there's no centralized way for you to really understand and read what's going on in your business. And when you start to put the financial aspects of this through software, you actually can start to see, and the data starts to tell you a story, or tells you at a customer the other day, and he's like, I look through my sales report, and I don't need to look at every single proposal my people send out. I just look at the margin, I look at the totals, and I just can flag where I have questions, right? Or, hey, someone forgot to put something in the system, and we caught it because we would have maybe lost out on collect. We wouldn't have realized we had to collect from a customer, right? So I guess it's like leakage, right? Leakage happens when you don't, when you've got manual processes. And I think that event owners don't even realize how much money they're losing or how much more opportunity they have to grow their business because they don't know it because they don't have anything to see it in.
Oh.
And that's where I think the biggest opportunity for event companies are.
Okay, so if you, like I know in the media business, we know what the margins are in certain things. Is there if you're looking at, take yourself back to your old business, what kind of margin should you be running your event business at? And maybe explain a little bit about what a margin is to people, because I got a feeling that may even be a strange phenomenon to many. Yeah,
I think it's, I look always at it from an event company perspective, right? You're in essence in some ways you're adding this value add, but what you've got to do is you've got to purchase, right, all of these products from for your customer. So some people, do pass through, right, and they just they go and procure all those different services, and then they just put a management fee on top of that, and others actually include everything in it and sell it as one as one proposal. And so our approach was that we were going to sell everything to the customer and put a very minimal service fee. And the way that we made our money was having that data allowed us to aggregate our buying power and buy more from very specific suppliers and really bring them as partners and be able to negotiate really good rates because they got the volume of business and we consistently provide, same process, right? Created efficiencies in the way we ordered from our suppliers. So really ultimately our margin was what we could buy it for and what we could sell it for to the customer. And so for us, data was really important and process discipline was really important in order to increase our margins. And that for us was our gross margin, right? So, if you try to be at a gross margin even of 30%, you really may only wind up at 7 or 8% net margins in the business, depending on how much volume, right, how many events you do, because it's all about what's your gross margin, right, which is how much you make off that event before you have to pay all your your planners and pay for your lease and pay for all the overhead.
The direct charges.
Yeah, exactly. So it starts there, and again, for us, that was the better we could buy it, the higher that margin. But then it was also the efficiency of your team. So if I had 3 people in finance who had to process and manage all of those invoices and payments, that was going to be another $150,000, right, that I would have to pay in overhead for the business, which would ultimately bring down my net margin. And because I had the software and was able to have like half a person in finance, that was an automatic $150,000, $200,000.
That goes right to your bottom line.
Exactly. And my event planners, I want them to create great experiences for the customer, which meant they had to spend time. But how many can they handle at once, right? By automating all the financial aspects for them, they were able to handle probably 20 to 30% more events than if they had to do all that stuff manually. So therefore, that's where I improved my margin, right? So those were kind of the efficiency gains. But then the other place where I improved my margin is automatically you have to assume if you're doing a manual process, 3 to 5% you're losing money in leakage. It's just going to happen. People use an Excel, they calculated the wrong price, they missed taxes, they did the wrong margin. It's just factual across the board. If you're doing things manually, it's 3 to 5% leakage. So I was able to improve my margin by 3%, my net margin by 3%, just by using a software system that would catch all of those things so that I didn't have leakage. And that really all adds up.
Yeah, no, it sounds incredible. But are you the Bloomberg of our industry in a sense? Would you say you set the standard for that? Not to promote you too heavily, but I don't see other people doing this in the way that you're talking about it.
Well, it's interesting because we've spent a lot of time talking about the event company, the tool we built, and really we stopped actively selling it in the last couple of years because it was surprising to me how there wasn't that much interest or demand from kind of smaller event companies, and that they were okay with the pain hasn't been great enough, and they were okay to continue to doing things manually. And so we've really focused then, even though that's where my roots came from, we've really focused in the last 2 years on corporate, right? Because for corporate, it's spend management, right? There are category managers that have to manage this category. They need to find savings. They need to optimize the budgets. They need compliance, right? There's issues of fraud. They have all kinds of things. And so they really have real pain points that they're interested in solving and wanting software to solve. So, and we've really we have that product still available and we have customers on it. We've really spent our time solving problems for the large corporations. Like we've got some really big customers, Fortune 100 customers, and they are using our solution primarily to remove the pain of payments, right? Supplier payments for these large companies is really painful, and to get their data, right, the visibility into the data so that they can better manage the category. There's other types of pain in terms of being able to have the visibility for finance to see an end-to-end budget, visibility for a meeting owner to know what's being spent on their budget, being able to route invoices through a software for approval instead of kind of emailing them up. So there's definitely those types of pain points that we solve, but for corporate, there's just much more of a need and interest to want to solve some of these challenges.
I noticed that on your website that you are connected to Lanyon in some form. How does that work? And is it Cvent going to be? Is it a competitor, or is it similar? I mean, where do you fit in the landscape of all these guys, and what's everybody doing now?
Great question. So Cvent recently bought Lanyon. We have a partnership with the Lanyon solution, which now we have a partnership with Cvent's Lanyon solution, and we're working on the Cvent solution as well. And those tools are meeting management tools, right? If you think about the front end of the process, right, the things that the planner does in a day-to-day in terms of their meeting registration, they definitely use that for budget. A lot of people use it for budget management. And there's all kinds of apps and things that are kind of do with like the attendee and all kinds of things that they really focus on. And even when you think about it from a SMM or strategic meeting management wheelhouse, there's a piece that is missing, right, in those tools, and the ability to connect into the company's overall systems, right? And ultimately, payments is actually a big piece of the SMM process. So today, without EVED, if you're using a Lanyon or a Cvent, somebody's manually entering the spend data into those tools and then manually creating some kind of a journal entry or logging or coding their charges to go up into their overall system, like an SAP type AP system.
Right.
And so that's a manual process that's connecting those two that somebody's doing. And of course, when there's manual entry, it never matches. There's data integrity issues. So what EVED's really doing is sitting in the middle by processing the payments. We actually sit in the middle and link the SMM system to the overall company AP system. And so when we're processing the invoice and the payment, we then send that data into Lanyon or Cvent to populate that budget instead of someone manually entering it. And then we automatically send the data into their AP system. So we become that source of the data, and so therefore the AP system and Lanyon or Cvent will always match. So what we say is we close the loop. There's this gap in those, and we close the loop. And I would say they completely focus on a meetings management and the whole front-end process. And again, we're completely focused on kind of invoice approval, payment processing, spend data, right?
So where does the budget actually, the planner that's creating the budget, are they doing it on the meeting management software, or they are doing it on your side, or can you do it in both?
Good question. Yeah, I think, they definitely, a lot of companies that use the meeting management solution for budget management usually continue to do that, and then we actually pull it in. So we'll just pull in that budget into our system and help to manage the disbursement of the budget, right? Because we're processing the invoices and the payments, so we can make sure that they don't go over budget. So if they're already using that, we just integrate and pull that stuff in. Even the meeting registration, you register your meetings in Lanyon, and we pull all of that over into EVED along with the budget, and then, in essence, when they upload the invoices, we make sure that in aggregate those invoices don't go over the budget, and then we route those invoices for approval, and we take care of the payment to the supplier. And then we've got that data, we send it back into Lanyon. So we just kind of eliminated all that manual process that was being done. And there are some customers that don't use a tool like that for budget. They can do, budget in our tool, but certainly Lanyon is built more for kind of the meetings person to manage their budget in there.
What about on the event side? I mean, there's products like BizBash and these software products and these apps that are helping you manage your whole meeting. Does that fit into your ecosystem, or is that?
So to me, I'm not quite sure of all of them, but there's definitely, when I think of meeting management, there's like project management, right?
Yes.
Lists, tables. Like, to me, that's, again, the meetings management side of it. We're really focused on the financial side, right? The back end side of it, the financial pieces. And none of those suites
none of them do that. No.
What we do. Yeah.
It's so interesting. So where do you, I mean, you have an interesting bird's eye seat in the industry. Where do you see the biggest failings for future development? I mean, you've actually identified this piece. Is there a piece that if you had $1 gazillion and a lot of time that you would want to work on to solve?
Well, I think what's interesting, again, the opportunity, especially from the corporate side, is I've always believed that, and that's why I'm in this space, is that I am such a I believe it's just incredibly powerful to live meetings as a channel for marketing. The human, experience and talking live is so powerful. So I believe that live meetings are going to continue to grow and continue to be the most impactful marketing channel with the greatest return on investment for large corporations. And so when I think about that from a marketing perspective, events, there's a whole attendee engagement side of it where the registration to attend the event is just the starting point of what else can you learn about, whether it's your customers or potential customers or your own employees that you have at an event, by engaging with them. You've got like their captive attention for 24 or 48 hours. That just doesn't happen anymore, right? That is amazing. How do you maximize and interact in that 24 or 48 hours that helps you better know them, better sell to them, better whatever your business goal is? And I think there's all kinds of opportunities with technology to do that.
I totally agree. I think I mentioned to you before, there's a book called Social Physics by Alex Pentland, and he studies how people connect with each other and based on their communication style. So you're wearing this sociometric badge that measures, what you look at, what you say, your energy, and everything else, to really figure out what happens in real time. And I think when people we'll be able to start like judging the energy of the room in real time, they can make adjustments to the program on the spot.
Which is just amazing. I mean, so that would be, if I wasn't playing in what we call the event commerce space, I would be playing in the attendee engagement space. And I actually think that's probably where C-Event is going to go spend its efforts, right? Because that near customers is the marketing, the CMO, and using live events as a really powerful business channel and marketing channel. So that to me is really interesting. I think what's important for the planners and for the industry is not to be afraid of the transparency that is starting to happen, is going to start to happen. I mean, if you think of what happened with like Salesforce or other CRM tools, salespeople were a lot like event planners, in which they were doing it manually on their Excel sheets. They liked doing it the way they wanted to do it. Their jobs were very important to the company, and they definitely didn't love having to go into a centralized system, because then everyone knew exactly where they were at with their sales and what they were doing and what activities they were doing. And so they were really kind of resentful of that. But then obviously that's changed, and most people won't run a sales team without a CRM, because when you aggregate all that data and you have visibility into it, you can really create opportunities to leverage and make that sales team so much better and make that salesperson so much better. And so I think from the meeting side that we need to embrace wanting to provide that visibility and transparency and moving from manual processes, because only once we can deliver the data up to the C-suite will they truly say, I'm willing to move dollars from my digital channel or from my print channel and move it to the event channel, because I've got the data to support the business case. And without data in these large corporations and things, they're not going to get that kind of funding in those dollars. So the way for us to grow our industry is to become, just like all the other categories, is much more data-driven. And so that's where I think we need to embrace as a industry is really a lot more on providing transparency and visibility.
So where's the center of gravity, I guess, is the question. With event planning, is it the CMO now, or is it the planner? Is the planner job kind of obsolete if they just think about themselves as a logistical and non-strategic player?
Yeah, I think there's two roles that a planner could view themselves in, right? If they'll be valuable and strategic if they think of themselves as an experience builder, right? Of taking the business goal and creating that experience with it. If they think of themselves as just logistics and being able to check the boxes or manually push paper, I think that's eventually going to go away just because the company is going to see that's a commodity. Now, there'll always be people who do that, but that'll be more of a commodity. The planners who elevate themselves, who think about the events strategically, who create and produce, right, are the ones that will be incredibly valuable because the events that can create the most return on the business goal are going to be incredibly valuable. Think of themselves almost more as marketers, right? And I see in companies, if you look at the event team, the event marketing team, their in-house staff that they keep are event marketers, right? They're more strategic.
Right.
And they're starting to outsource the logistic aspect because the company's viewing that more as a commodity. It doesn't matter who I use as long as it executes well, but my value is in the ones who know how to create the experience. And so I think event planners can elevate themselves and want to get automated on all that stuff and be able to focus on how they get more strategic and become more experience builders.
So what is the career path now for an event? Someone that decides they love the word events. How do they become a superstar event planner, marketer, et cetera, whatever we're calling this now?
I think it depends what they like to do, right? Some people just love to almost project manage, right? They just love to create the lists and deal with the logistics.
That's logistics
and
side.
Make sure. Yeah, and then that's great, but
Yep.
I don't think that's bad. I think they should go into that, and we are going to still need those.
Yep.
They're just going to be more of a commodity because a lot of people are going to be able to do that pretty well. And so you don't think you'll be able to make too much money in it, and I don't know that you'll be able to stand out too well, but you know what? We are always going to need good people like that.
Right.
I think if you are interested in really making a big career at it, I think you have to learn on how to really be almost in event marketing, right? Or an experience builder. It's not always marketing,
right.
But understanding what your customer is trying to create and the picture and paint that picture for them and then be able to execute against it within the budget that you have, right? Being able to maximize that budget to create the best experience. And that's just a little bit different skill set to focus on.
Yeah, well, I think what you're saying is that whatever side you choose, you want to spend more time doing what you do well and use technology and systems like yours to make it sure that you're not spending time on things that don't really matter from the point of view of using technology to make what was complex trivial, which is kind of the purpose of technology.
I don't think there's anyone who's going to say, I loved filling out that credit card authorization form and faxing it or emailing it to the supplier and then getting my credit card statement and checking my invoices against the bill and making sure it's correct. And when it's not, calling the supplier and telling them they overcharged me and waiting till we fix it. Nobody who thinks that likes that. I've never met anyone that does. So, for example, Evid completely eliminates that, right? And so, wow, that's a really major pain point that gets, eliminated. But when you start to think about things like invoice processing, right, and checking to make sure that like the hotel bill, right, I think that is something for the future too, right? You get the hotel bill and it's 30 pages long, and you got to check to make sure that all the right charges are there. I think there's definitely going to be more and more opportunities to make that process simpler too, because I don't think anybody likes to spend time reconciling a hotel bill either.
Do you also get, this is the last question, do you also get, almost the last question, the tax issue going? I mean, I've had a lot of my colleagues in the event world get completely flabbergasted because all of a sudden they have these tax issues that come up and they don't even realize what they're doing. Do you take care of that side at all?
So I think we automate to make sure that you are collecting taxes. You can set up your tax templates, right? So on our event product, you can set up your tax templates, and you can make sure that you're automatically collecting tax so your planners aren't worrying about it because it sets it up and automatically does that. And then it gives you your tax reports and tells you exactly what you owe to who and allows you to track that you've paid them. So if you're ever audited, it's all in there cleanly. I'll tell you, when I had my event company, we got hit, and I think this was something that went on in the event world and still does in the state of California and the state of Texas and Illinois. We got hit. We were collecting tax. But then when we did a service fee on top of whatever we were selling, we didn't collect tax on it, and they came back and said, well, you've got to collect tax on your service fee, which we had even gone to like an accountant beforehand to understand what we needed to collect tax on. But in essence, we battled it, and it really doesn't matter. The state usually wins, regardless if you are right or wrong. And we got hit with a $35,000 tax bill that we never obviously hadn't collected from customers, so we had to come out of pocket on it.
Well,
and
that's a definitely. I've heard that cautionary tale at least 25 times. That it is definitely a pain point. That at least with your system, you can at least, I guess, pre-plan some of these things, or at least know what buckets you're in the right places for.
Yeah, you can set up, and you don't have to worry. If you're doing it manually, you have to make sure that your planners know what tax they're supposed to charge for what, and make sure they do it. And here in our system, you just set a template that says collect 10.75% tax on food and beverage and 6% on rentals, and it'll just automatically do that. And again, take your planners off of worrying about those things and focusing in on experiences.
Great, Talia. This has been fantastic. It's probably the geekiest conversation that I have ever had on a podcast, and I find it fascinating. I hope our listeners will, because it's one of these things that if you really think about it, it is so important. So where can people get in touch with you and find out more about what you do?
Sure. So our website is eved.com, eved.com, and definitely opportunities there to send a note. You can also send it to sales@eved if you want to send an email, and love to do demos for anyone who's just interested in understanding it, or even love having the conversations and understanding the pain points that exist out there.
Well, I have to ask you one question. Why that name? What does that mean?
So Eved, the root word of Eved in Hebrew means service. And we really think about what the ERP systems are challenged. They're great for the inventory but for when it comes to the service categories, that's where they're challenged. So that's part of it. It also sounds like event. When we created the company, we could trademark it, which is a big deal, and had a website domain. And ultimately, while we're a software company, the service part of it is incredibly important to us. And so for all those reasons, we named it Eved.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Talia. This has been fantastic.
Thank you. I appreciate having me on.
Great.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. We can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Player FM, Google Play, and Pocket Cast. Be sure to leave us a rating and review. It helps others discover the GatherGeeks podcast. We'd also love to hear from you. You can leave feedback on Twitter @GatherGeeks, or leave us an email, gathergeeks@bizbash.com. We hope you'll join us again for the next episode of GatherGeeks. Until then, gather on. Invest in yourself and your staff with self-paced online event education designed to fit into your busy schedule. Subscribe to the Event Leadership Institute for only $25 per month and gain access to an extensive on-demand video library of classes, as well as interviews with industry leaders. Best of all, you can watch classes in small pieces or all at once. For more information, visit eventleadershipinstitute.com.